Now, the first thing we do as project managers is to create the project charter. Think about the project charter document as the internal contract between you as the project manager and the organization. It's the agreement between the project manager and the organizational management to kick off the project, to formally authorize the project. So develop project charter. It's the process of developing a document that formally authorizes the existence of a project and provides the project manager with the authority to apply organizational resources to the project objectives. The key benefit of this process is that it provides a direct link between the project and the strategic objectives of the organization, creates a formal record of the project, and shows the organization commitment to the project. And this is what I mean with consider the charter as an internal agreement. It shows the organizational senior management commitment toward your project. So this process, or the project charter, will create the link between the project you are managing and the strategic objectives of the organization. How? Actually, the organizational management will never accept having a project without a clear link to the organizational strategic objectives. So having the project charter is a formal record. It's the birth certificate that allow you to use the organizational, financial, and human resources to kick off your project. This process is performed once throughout the project. The project charter is a document that is rarely updated throughout the project. Now, the inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs of this process are depicted in the figure below. Now, for each process, we will be explaining in this course regarding the processes in the project management body of knowledge. We will have the inputs, the documents you need to have in order to kick off the process, the tools and techniques, any softwares, any procedures you can use in order to develop the outputs of this process. So for each process, I will walk you through the inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs. Now, from this figure, the inputs will be the pre-project business documents, the business case and the benefits management plan, in addition to any agreements and the enterprise environmental factors and the organizational process assets. The tools and techniques, you will use the expert judgment. You will use some of the data gathering techniques like the brainstorming, focus groups, and interviews, interpersonal and team skills like the conflict management, facilitation, and meeting management, in addition to the meetings. So we will be using, or we can use, 4 tools and techniques in this process. The key outputs of the developed project charter is the project charter. This is the most important output, and the assumption log. Now, the data flow diagram of this process can show you the importance of the developed project charter as a process. It shows that the inputs for this process will come from the business documents, the business case and the benefits management plan, any agreements, in addition to the enterprise environmental factors and the organizational process assets. Now, the outputs, the project charter, and the assumption log. The assumption log will be archived as a project document, but see how the project charter is being used in multiple project management processes. So it's a very important process because the output of the process 4.1 develop project charter will be used in like 14 other processes. So the project charter is one of the most important project documents from a project management perspective. Now, what are the inputs in order to develop the project charter? First of all, I will need the business documents. And the business documents, mainly in project management, there are 2 documents, the business case and the benefits management plan. For you, when you are starting the project and working on developing the project charter, they are great sources of information about the project's objectives and how the project will contribute to the business goals of the organization. Although the business documents are developed prior to the project, they are reviewed periodically. So it's not the responsibility of the project manager to develop the business documents. The business case actually and the benefits management plan were created before you are assigned as a project manager. However, you need to have a look at them. They are great sources of information. They can show you the business justification, why your project was initiated, how it will serve the organizational goals and objectives. So you need to analyze those business documents. The business case can be defined as the approved business case or similar, is the business document most commonly used to create the project charter. So the key input when you are developing your project charter is the business case. The business case describes the necessary information from a business standpoint to determine whether the expected outcomes of the project justify the required investment. Simply, the business case is a document that shows you how the project outcomes or expected outcomes or intended outcomes will justify the required investment from the project. So the business case will answer the question, why as an organization I should invest in this project? The answer should be written in the business case. The business case is created as a result of one or more of the following. Why do you create a business case? Why do you need a project? Either because of a market demand, organizational need, customer request, technological advance, legal requirement, or social need. There are a lot of reasons why we can create projects, but here are some of them. The second input to the develop project charter process is the agreements. If there are any agreements signed already, contract, service level agreements, memorandums of understanding, all these agreements will be a valid input while we are developing the project charter. Typically, a contract is used when a project is being performed for an external customer. This is an example. If you are doing the project for an external customer, there should be a contract between you and the external customer, and this contract will be an important input for you as a project manager to develop the project charter. The third input will be the enterprise environmental factors, and we talked about them, how they can influence your project in the previous section. It can influence the develop project charter process. Some of the enterprise environmental factors that can influence this process are the government or industry standards, legal and regulatory requirements and constraints, marketplace conditions, organizational culture and political climate, organizational governance framework, and stakeholders' expectations and risk thresholds. All these are examples of enterprise environmental factors that might affect or influence developing the project charter. However, they are not under your control as a project manager. The fourth input will be the organizational process assets, and some of those assets that can influence the develop project charter process includes the organizational standard policies, procedures, portfolio program and project governance framework, monitoring and reporting methods, templates, and lessons learned repository. Simply, if you are planning to develop the project charter in your project, you don't want to create a charter. Most probably you will have a standard template for the project charter in your organizational process assets, and you should use this template. Now, what are the tools and techniques once we have these inputs? Starting with the expert judgment, it's a frequently used technique in project management, just consulting with the experts. So judgment provided upon expertise as an application area, knowledge area, or discipline as appropriate for the activity being performed. And in this process, we are developing the project charter, so we might consult any experts in the industry in similar projects earlier just to help us develop the project charter. The second tool will be the meetings. For the develop project charter process, meetings are held with key stakeholders to identify the project objectives, success criteria, key deliverables, high-level requirements, the summary milestones of the project, and other summary information. All this information should be documented in the project charter. So how we will know what are the key deliverables expected from the project, how the project will be measured as a success at the end of it, what are the high-level requirements of the stakeholders, what are the milestones. All this information can be gathered through conducting meetings. The third tool, the interpersonal and team skills, the ones that might be used while developing the project charter, includes but not limited to the conflict management. You as the project manager or the project management team members should utilize your conflict management techniques in order to help bring stakeholders into alignment on the objectives, success criteria, high-level requirements, project description, summary milestones, and other elements of the project charter. So whenever there is a conflict or the stakeholders are not being aligned on a key section of the project charter, you can use the conflict management techniques in order to resolve this conflict. The second skill is the facilitation. A facilitator ensures that there is effective participation, that all participants achieve a mutual understanding, that all contributions are considered, that conclusions or results have full buy-in according to the decision process established for the project, and that the actions and agreements achieved are appropriately dealt with afterward. So you need just to use your facilitation skills to make sure the discussions, the meetings, the focus groups are moving well, and you are making sure that all participants are participating and providing you with their opinions. The third skill is the meeting management. It includes preparing the agenda of the meeting, ensuring that a representative for each key stakeholder group is invited to the meeting, and preparing and sending the minutes of meeting after finishing the meeting. So this is the meeting management skill, and these are the interpersonal and team skills you can use while you are developing the project charter. Some of the data gathering tools and techniques we can use in this process includes the brainstorming, one of the most commonly used techniques in project management. Brainstorming is used to identify a long list of ideas in a short period of time. This is why brainstorming is the preferred data gathering technique for the majority of the project managers. You can generate a long list of ideas in a very short period of time. It is conducted in a group environment, and it is led by a facilitator. So you cannot just brainstorm alone. You need to brainstorm as part of the group. This is the benefit of brainstorming. Usually brainstorming comprises two parts. The first one is the idea generation, where you will have a long list of ideas, and then you will analyze those ideas to shortlist them. Brainstorming can be used to gather data and solutions or ideas from stakeholders, subject matter experts, and team members when developing the project charter. Focus groups, another data gathering tool which brings together stakeholders and subject matter experts to learn about the perceived project risk, success criteria, and other topics in a more conversational way than a one-to-one interviews. So we can use interviews to generate data and information from the stakeholders. However, focus groups are more efficient, as you will bring stakeholders together and they will think together. So it is somehow similar to the brainstorming technique. Interviews, another data gathering technique which we can use while we are developing the project charter. It is used to obtain information on high-level requirements, assumptions or constraints, approval criteria, and other information from stakeholders by talking directly to the stakeholders. Now, why I need to gather information about the high-level requirements, the assumptions, constraints, approval criteria? Because all this information should be documented as part of the project charter. Now, what are the outputs of this process? We will have one important project document where we are going to document all the assumptions, the assumption log. It's a high-level strategic and operational assumptions and constraints are normally identified in the business case before the project is initiated and will flow into the project charter. The assumption log is used to record all assumptions and constraints throughout the project lifecycle. So this is a live document. You will create the assumption log at this process. However, it will be updated frequently as an output of other project management processes. So it's a document where all the assumptions and constraints are being recorded. The second output, the key output, is the project charter. The project charter, the definition of this project document is that it describes the high-level scope of the project, the organization structure, and the objectives of the project. It's typically created by the project manager and formally approved by the sponsor. Okay, so typically it's created by the project manager and it should be signed or approved by the project sponsor. In some situations, the project charter might be created even before the project manager is assigned. That's fine. But in most of the cases, it's the project manager's responsibility to develop the project charter. Now, the project charter will authorize the project manager use of organizational resources for the project and is understood to be an agreement between the sponsor, stakeholders, and the project manager. So think about it as an internal contract between you as the project manager, the organizational stakeholders, and the sponsor. Now, what are the project charter components? So if I give you a project charter today for a project, what should you expect to see in this project charter? First of all, the project title and description, who is the project manager and what is the level of authority for the project manager. The business case will be documented as part of the project charter. If there are any resources pre-assigned, they will be documented as part of the charter. The key stakeholders of the project, who are the key stakeholders and what are their key requirements, the high-level constraints and assumptions of the project, the high-level project objectives, what is the exit criteria, and the exit criteria can be defined as the conditions to be met in order to cancel or close a project, what is the product descriptions, and what are the deliverables of the project, what are the overall project risks, who is the project sponsor authorizing the project. These are the key sections of the project charter, and knowing them is very important for the exam. So the project charter is an important document. Usually in practice, it's the first document prepared by the project manager. All the information in the project charter is high-level information. Nothing is detailed. You are just alone in the project. So you cannot have the detailed list of risks. You will have only the overall high-level risks of the project. So all information documented in the project charter is documented in a high-level approach.